In all my years working at the Intergalactic Cultural Exchange Program, I never imagined I'd end up in a situation like this. You see, being Earth's representative meant attending countless ceremonies across different star systems, but this particular invitation to the Celestial Festival on Proxima b seemed straightforward enough. At least, that's what I thought. I remember adjusting my regulation blue uniform in the mirror of my quarters aboard the transport ship, making sure everything was perfect for what I assumed would be just another diplomatic function. The datapad in my hand displayed the invitation with its swirling alien script, which our AI translator had rendered as "Your presence is requested at the Grand Union ceremony." I figured it was their version of a wedding. You know, two beings joining their lives together. Pretty standard stuff, right? The journey to Proxima b took 3 weeks in cryo sleep, but I barely noticed the time passing. When I woke up, the sight of the crystalline cities floating in the pink clouds below took my breath away. The Proximans, with their iridescent skin and graceful movements, had built their civilization in the upper atmosphere of their world. Their structures looked like massive soap bubbles connected by bridges made of pure light. The welcome I received was overwhelming, to say the least. A delegation of 7 Proximan women, each more ethereally beautiful than the last, greeted me with what I now realize was far too much enthusiasm for a simple wedding guest. They draped me in traditional ceremonial robes woven from what appeared to be solidified starlight, and kept referring to me as the chosen one. I just smiled and nodded, chalking it up to cultural differences. Our xenoanthropology training always emphasized being respectful of local customs, no matter how strange they might seem. Looking back, I should have picked up on the signs. The way the entire floating city was decorated with Earth symbols alongside Proximan ones. How the local news channels kept showing my official diplomatic photo. The fact that I was given the most luxurious suite in the celestial spire, with a view of all 7 moons. But you know what they say about hindsight being 20/20ths. It wasn't until the actual ceremony began that things started to click. The grand hall was packed with thousands of Proximans, all eyes fixed on me as I was led to the central platform. The 7 women who had greeted me earlier stood in a circle around me, each holding what looked like a ceremonial bond crystal. The high priestess approached with a smile that somehow managed to be both serene and mischievous. "Honored Earthchild," she said in perfect English, which was the first red flag since they usually relied on translators. "Are you ready to fulfill the ancient prophecy and bring unity to our worlds through the sacred bonds of marriage?" My brain took a few seconds to process those words. Marriage? Prophecy? I looked around the room at the expectant faces of not just the 7 women, but the entire assembly. The realization hit me like a meteor. I wasn't just a guest at this wedding. According to some ancient Proximan prophecy, I was apparently destined to marry all 7 of these women, effectively becoming a diplomatic bridge between Earth and Proxima b. And that's how I found myself standing there, mouth agape, as 7 pairs of opalescent eyes gazed at me lovingly, waiting for my response. The high priestess held out the ceremonial bond crystal, and I could feel the weight of 2 civilizations' expectations resting on my shoulders. What happened next? Well, that's where things get really interesting. Time seemed to freeze in that crystalline hall as my mind raced through every diplomatic protocol I'd ever learned. None of them covered accidentally becoming the prophecy bridegroom to 7 alien women. The bond crystal in the high priestess's hands pulsed with a soft blue light, matching the rhythm of my increasingly panicked heartbeat. There must be some mistake. I managed to stammer out, trying to maintain my diplomatic composure. "I'm just a junior representative from the Cultural Exchange Program." "Surely your prophecy speaks of someone more qualified?" The 7 women around me exchanged amused glances, their iridescent skin shimmering with what I could now recognize as suppressed laughter. The tallest of the 7, who introduced herself as First Speaker Lyra, stepped forward. "The prophecy speaks of one who would come from the blue world, bearing the mark of the twin stars," she explained, gesturing to my uniform's insignia. 2 simple stars that marked me as a second-year representative. I made a mental note to have a serious talk with our uniform design department when I got back to Earth. As if reading my thoughts, the high priestess smiled. Your arrival was no accident, Earth child. The invitation was carefully worded to ensure proper protocol while fulfilling the requirements of prophecy. Your superiors were selectively informed. Great. So not only was I unprepared for this, but apparently someone back at headquarters thought it would be funny to throw me into this situation without warning. The second tallest woman, Nova, approached with a data pad. We have spent years studying Earth customs, she said proudly. We understand the concept of dating, courtship, and getting to know one another. We are prepared to adapt our traditions to make you comfortable. The other women nodded eagerly, and I noticed they each carried similar data pads filled with what appeared to be Earth romance novels and relationship guides. I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all, which seemed to delight them. The tension in my shoulders eased slightly as I realized that despite the awkward situation, they were genuinely trying to be considerate of my cultural background. So, I ventured, if I understand correctly, you're saying this isn't an immediate I do situation. The High Priestess's eyes twinkled. The prophecy speaks of union, yes, but it does not specify when. The ceremonial gathering today is more of a, what do you humans call it? An engagement party? Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by a new wave of panic as I realized this meant I was now technically engaged to 7 alien women. The crowd around us murmured excitedly, apparently picking up on my slightly less terrified expression. Each of my supposed fiancees had a unique role in Proximan society. Lyra was a diplomat, Nova a scientist, Astra commanded their defense forces, Celeste was their chief engineer, Vega handled interstellar commerce, Luna was their foremost artist, and Stella served as their head physician. They were, essentially, the cream of Proximan society, and they had all apparently been preparing for my arrival their entire lives. As the reality of my situation sank in, a thought occurred to me that sent chills down my spine. What exactly does this prophecy say about Earth and Proxima B's future relationship? I asked, dreading the answer. The High Priestess's expression turned serious for the first time. That, she said gravely, is precisely why we needed someone like you. You see, what we haven't told anyone yet is, she glanced around the crowded hall and lowered her voice. Perhaps we should discuss this somewhere more private. There are things you need to know, things that affect not just our worlds, but the entire galaxy. Following the High Priestess and my 7 fiancés through the winding crystal corridors, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had stumbled into something far bigger than an unexpected engagement. The floating city's lights dimmed as we descended into what appeared to be an ancient archive chamber, its walls lined with holographic records that pulsed with an otherworldly glow. 3 months ago, Astra began, her military training evident in her precise tone. Our long-range sensors detected something approaching from the outer rim of the galaxy, something that shouldn't exist. She waved her hand, and a holographic image materialized in the center of the room. A massive dark mass moving between the stars, consuming all light in its path. Nova, the scientist, pulled up additional data streams. We thought it was a sensor malfunction at first, but then we discovered ancient warnings about this exact phenomenon in our historical records. The same records that spoke of you. She glanced at me, her iridescent eyes reflecting the ominous hologram. Our ancestors called it the Void Tide, Celeste added, her engineer's mind already calculating possibilities. It's a wave of, well, nothing. It erases everything it touches from existence, not just matter, but space-time itself. The implications made my head spin. This wasn't just about an awkward cultural misunderstanding anymore. Lyra stepped forward, her diplomatic training evident in how she chose her next words carefully. The prophecy doesn't just speak of marriage, Earthchild. It speaks of survival. Our scientists discovered that the unique combination of human DNA and Proximan energy signatures creates a frequency that can repel the void tide. But it requires a deep, genuine bond, not just a political arrangement. Which is why we've spent our lives preparing to understand and connect with you. Luna added softly, her artist's sensibility bringing warmth to the terrifying conversation. The ceremony isn't just about marriage. It's about creating a bridge between our species that's strong enough to save both our worlds. The High Priestess activated an ancient device that projected a timeline into the air. We have approximately 2 Earth months before the void tide reaches the first inhabited system, 4 months until it reaches Proxima b, 5 until it reaches Earth. She paused, letting that sink in. No pressure, of course. I slumped against one of the crystal walls, trying to process everything. So, let me get this straight. Not only am I supposedly destined to marry 7 incredible women, but our relationship is somehow the key to saving both our planets from being erased from existence. Stella, the physician, approached with what looked like a medical scanner. Your stress levels are elevated, but stable, she noted with professional concern. Would you like some calming tea? We've synthesized it to be compatible with human biology. Before I could answer, Vega, who had been quietly analyzing data streams, suddenly straightened up. We have a problem, she announced, her usual commerce-focused composure cracking slightly. The void tide, it's accelerating. The calculations were wrong. We don't have months. We have weeks, maybe less. The holographic displays around us flared with urgent updates, casting shifting shadows across the ancient chamber. 7 pairs of eyes turned to me, along with the High Priestess's knowing gaze. The weight of 2 worlds, no, an entire galaxy, pressed down on my shoulders. And in that moment, as alarms began to sound throughout the floating city, I realized that my simple diplomatic mission had turned into a race against time to save everything and everyone I had ever known. The question was, how could I genuinely fall in love with 7 different people while figuring out how to stop an unstoppable force of cosmic destruction? And more importantly, why did I have a sneaking suspicion that these incredible women weren't telling me everything yet? The alarms echoing through the crystal archive chamber suddenly shifted pitch, and I watched as my 7 Fanties exchanged worried glances. Before anyone could explain, a new hologram burst to life, a 3-dimensional map of nearby space showing a second anomaly, this one approaching from the opposite direction of the void tide. Impossible, Nova whispered, her fingers dancing across multiple data screens. The readings, they're identical to yours when you first arrived. She looked at me with wide eyes. There's another human entering our system. The High Priestess's serene composure cracked for the first time since I'd met her. The prophecy speaks of a choice, she admitted reluctantly. A test to determine if the bonds formed are genuine. We had hoped to have more time before this part. Astra's military training kicked in as she activated the city's defense grid. Unknown vessel approaching. Configuration matches Earth Diplomatic Corps, but the identification codes are scrambled. Her voice carried an edge I hadn't heard before. Whoever they are, they're trying to hide their identity. A crackling transmission cut through the tension, and a familiar voice filled the chamber. This is Senior Representative Thompson. My blood ran cold. It was my direct superior from Earth, the one who had sent me on this mission. I'm here to prevent a terrible mistake. The prophecy has been mistranslated. Your chosen one isn't the junior representative. It's me. Lyra stepped forward, her diplomatic instincts sharp. That's not possible. The marks, the timing, everything points to. She stopped mid-sentence as Thompson's ship came into visual range. There, clearly visible on its hull, was an insignia identical to mine. The twin stars, Celeste breathed. But how? Those markings are supposed to be unique to each representative's rank. Vega pulled up Earth's diplomatic records, her commerce background proving unexpectedly useful. There's something wrong here. These records show Thompson was promoted past that rank 15 years ago. He shouldn't have those markings anymore. Luna, usually focused on art and culture, surprised everyone by making a crucial connection. The ancient texts don't just speak of the marks, she said, pulling up a holographic scroll. They mention one who wears the stars with honor versus one who claims them through deceit. As if responding to Luna's words, the bond crystal the High Priestess still held began to pulse with an intense light. Stella's medical scanner started beeping frantically. The energy readings from both you and the crystal are synchronizing, she reported, but Thompson's ship is generating some kind of artificial frequency trying to match the pattern. Suddenly, the pieces started falling into place in my mind. The prophecy, the void tide, Thompson's appearance. None of this is a coincidence, is it? I turned to the High Priestess. There's more to this story than just saving our worlds from destruction. The ancient chamber grew darker, the only light now coming from the pulsing bond crystal and the ominous holograms showing both approaching threats. The High Priestess's next words sent chills down my spine. The void tide isn't just approaching, child. It's being guided, and I fear your superior knows exactly who's controlling it. Before anyone could process this revelation, Thompson's ship began its descent toward the floating city. At the same time, the void tide's acceleration increased dramatically, as if responding to his presence. The 7 women moved protectively around me, their centuries of preparation suddenly taking on a new meaning. We need to make a choice, the High Priestess said gravely. But choose wisely, for it's not just about who bears the true marks anymore. It's about who has the strength to face what comes next. Because the real threat, she paused, looking at each of us in turn. The real threat isn't the void tide itself. It's what's hiding within it. The crystal chamber shuddered as Thompson's ship docked above. Through the translucent walls, we could see the void tide's dark mass expanding across the horizon, swallowing stars as it approached. Time was running out, and I had to make a decision that would affect not just 2 worlds, but the entire galaxy. The void tide isn't a natural phenomenon, I said, pieces clicking together in my mind. It's a weapon, isn't it? And somehow, Earth's diplomatic corps is involved. The 7 women exchanged knowing looks, confirming my suspicion. Years of reading diplomatic reports hadn't been wasted after all. The High Priestess raised the bond crystal, its light now pulsing in perfect sync with my heartbeat. Long ago, our ancestors discovered how to harness the energy between spaces, the void between stars. Some wanted to use it as a weapon. Others, like us, sought to build bridges between worlds instead. Footsteps echoed from above as Thompson and his security team descended toward our location. Astra's defensive screens flickered to life, buying us precious minutes. The prophecy, she explained quickly, isn't just about marriage or saving our worlds. It's about choosing a path forward for both our species, connection or destruction. Nova's scientific instruments suddenly lit up with urgent readings. The void tide's composition is changing, she reported. It's not erasing space-time, it's revealing something hidden within it. Some kind of doorway. The chamber's doors burst open as Thompson entered, wearing an identical uniform to mine. Step away from them, he commanded, his voice carrying an authority I'd always respected. You don't understand what's really at stake here. But I did understand, finally. Looking at my 7 fiancés, I saw not just their individual brilliance, but how they complemented each other and me. Lyra's diplomacy, Nova's science, Astra's strength, Celeste's innovation, Vega's vision, Luna's heart, and Stella's compassion. It wasn't about romance or prophecies. It was about bringing together the best of both our worlds. The bond crystal, I said, reaching for it. It's not just a ceremonial object, is it? It's a key. The High Priestess smiled as I grasped the crystal. Energy surged through me, and suddenly I could see the truth. The void tide wasn't approaching us. We were approaching it, along with thousands of other worlds, all converging on a single point in space. No. Thompson lunged forward, but he was too late. The 7 women moved in perfect synchronization, their combined energy merging with mine through the crystal. The chamber filled with blinding light as ancient machinery hummed to life within the city's walls. We are the bridge, Lyra declared, her voice carrying the weight of centuries, not just between Earth and Proxima b, but between all worlds caught in this expansion. The void tide surrounded our floating city, but instead of destruction, it brought revelation. We watched in awe as the darkness parted, revealing a vast network of ancient stargates connecting thousands of civilizations. The prophecy hadn't been about saving our worlds from destruction. It had been about restoring connection to a galaxy-spanning alliance that had been lost to time. But as the light faded and the true scope of our discovery became clear, a final alert sounded from Nova's instruments. The network was active, yes, but it was incomplete, and somewhere out there, through one of these newly revealed gates, something was responding to our signal. something that had been waiting a very, very long time for this moment. The High Priestess's expression turned grave as she translated the incoming message. "Welcome back," she read, "to the Galactic Council. Your trial period has ended. Let the true evaluation of humanity begin." I looked at my 7 Fientes, now bound to me not just by prophecy, but by a responsibility greater than any of us had imagined. Thompson slumped in defeat, his role in this cosmic drama finally clear. A test, a choice that had helped prove humanity's readiness for something far bigger than we'd ever dreamed. And as the first representatives from 1,000 worlds began appearing through the stargates, I couldn't help but wonder, was this really the end of our story, or just the beginning of a much greater adventure? Standing in that crystal chamber, surrounded by representatives from countless worlds, I realized how far I'd come from being just a junior diplomatic officer worried about an accidental marriage. Thompson was taken into custody by the Galactic Council's security forces. His role as humanity's test proctor officially ended. As it turned out, he had been working for the Council all along, playing the antagonist in an elaborate evaluation of Earth's readiness for greater galactic citizenship. The High Priestess stepped forward to address the gathered assembly, her voice carrying the weight of centuries of preparation. The prophecy has fulfilled its purpose. Earth and Proxima b have proven that different species can not only coexist, but forge genuine bonds of understanding and trust, even in the face of apparent crisis. My 7 Fientes, now my partners in something far more significant than marriage, stood with me as we learned the truth. The void tide had been an illusion, a sophisticated test mechanism used by the Galactic Council to evaluate emerging civilizations. Our response to it, choosing connection over conflict, had demonstrated humanity's potential. "So," I said, looking at Lyra with a mix of amusement and affection, "I guess this means our engagement isn't just about saving 2 worlds anymore." She laughed, her iridescent skin shimmering. "It never was," she replied. "It's about building something new together." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Earth was officially welcomed into the Galactic Council, with our unique union serving as the foundation for humanity's integration into the larger cosmic community. Each of my 7 partners took on crucial roles in bridging our cultures. Lyra establishing new diplomatic protocols, Nova sharing scientific discoveries, Astra coordinating defense strategies, Celeste revolutionizing our technology integration, Vega opening new trade routes, Luna facilitating cultural exchanges, and Stella implementing advanced medical knowledge. The floating cities of Proxima b became humanity's gateway to the stars, hosting delegates from thousands of worlds. Our accidental engagement had evolved into something far more meaningful, a symbol of hope for other emerging civilizations that peaceful first contact and genuine understanding were possible. As for our wedding, well, it turned out that the original ceremony had never been just about marriage. The Grand Union ceremony was actually our formal induction into the Galactic Council, with the personal bonds between us serving as proof of our species' compatibility. Though I have to admit, the traditional Proximan partnership ceremony we held afterward was pretty spectacular, especially with representatives from 1,000 worlds in attendance. Thompson was eventually pardoned, his role as humanity's unwitting challenger acknowledged as necessary for our growth. Before departing for his next assignment, he gave me a knowing smile. "Not bad for a junior representative," he said, "though I suspect that title won't fit you much longer." He was right. The Galactic Council appointed me as Earth's first senior ambassador, with my 7 partners serving as the joint delegation from Proxima b. Together, we began the monumental task of helping humanity navigate its place among the stars. Looking back now, from my office in the crystalline spire overlooking both the floating cities and the bustling Stargate network, I can't help but laugh at how it all started. I went from worrying about attending an alien wedding to helping forge the future of human galactic relations. And the best part, every day brings new adventures, new challenges, and new opportunities to prove that the strongest bonds in the universe aren't forged by prophecies or politics, but by genuine understanding and trust. As Luna would say, we're writing a new story now, not just for Earth or Proxima b, but for all the worlds yet to join our ever-growing galactic family. And if anyone asks me if I regret accepting that mysterious wedding invitation all those months ago, well, let's just say some of the best adventures in life start with saying yes to the unexpected.